know we had a YouTube channel.
Monica, can you hear us? Can you do me a favor and say something?
Hello.
That worked. Okay. Kate, you heard? You can hear us still?
Sure can.
Good. Thank you. Okay, Jim.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. I'll start with the roll call. Tony Rossi here, Steve Esposito here, Christian Gass here, myself, Jamie Joyce, Matt Blackburn, we believe is not joining us. He's excused for work. So he's excused. And we have Kate Dearson, I believe, remotely, our secretary Bianca remotely, and also we have Patty Friday here from council. While we have some time, you should have been handed a copy of the meeting minutes from last month. Let's review them, and if you have any corrections, let's speak up. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as written. I actually see a couple odd wording, Bianca. The heading council minutes probably should be like planning commission minutes or something. And in the second paragraph under minutes, it says it just went in that Chairman Joyce stated that they would have 20 spaces for the coffee shop. I guess we need a little bit more explanation there that Chairman Joyce corrected that Starbucks said they would have 20 spaces. Something to do with it, that we were reviewing Starbucks back in February.
Okay.
Does anybody else see anything else or want to make a motion to accept the meeting minutes as corrected?
So
And Christian seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the meeting minutes passed with minor correction. Do we have any?
I'm sorry, who made the motion and who seconded?
Stephen, and then Christian.
Thank you.
Next, moving on to just correspondence or general items that might have come into the borough, to the attention of the planning commission. Anything, Scott?
Nothing, sir.
Okay. I'm looking at the agenda that was handed out too, and it appears there's no new business. So that's interesting that we have a light agenda in front of us tonight. The old business is something we'd like to devote some attention to. So I think we could just turn right to the comprehensive plan, get an update on that. Yeah. And even after we adjourn the meeting, if we want to sit around and discuss further, we could do that too. Yeah. But let's have an update on what's happened in the last month of the comp plan.
Okay. So we've been working through outreach to the groups in town. I've been able to talk with, it's been a long month, Shade Tree, Boulevard Commission, Rec, and I've just finally gotten a response back from Chamber. That's going to need a little more work to get them engaged, I think. But in terms of the meetings with the other groups, they've been really productive and good. Lots of enthusiasm. What I've done is with each group, similar to the links I sent out to you guys, presented them with their links, and then jumped onto one of their monthly meetings and just walked them through the process. So I showed them the schedule that we've seen before, kind of the purpose of the update. Talked about the action items assigned to them specifically, but then got to learn a little bit about what their month-to-month kind of workload looks like, where they feel like they could fit in with any of this stuff. With Shade Tree and Boulevard, they really didn't have much assigned to them in the plan. So those were kind of quick conversations. I have some notes here. And sorry, Scott and Patty, you heard this on Monday. It's okay.
The fourth person group you said was chamber.
Chamber, yeah.
You don't mean council.
Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce, okay.
And we also, the April 6th council workshop presented action item, kind of the process and action items. And then on Monday, we presented again to council more formally the plan and the actual survey that we're going to put out to the public, a draft of that. So I'll go over that with this group tonight. But just some specifics on the outreach with the other groups. For Shade Tree, they had a lot of interest in kind of moving from, they made me feel like they're kind of in a reactive role. When trees got to come down, they go out and look or assist, but they want to be more proactive, look at kind of inventorying, kind of more rigorous kind of year-to-year management and identification of what they need to do and where to go on one hand. And then on the other hand,
a stupid question, but what does the Shade Tree Committee, what's their purpose?
they're
Literally what it's called, or?
yeah. Their responsibility is maintenance, repeating a mission statement, which I don't know off the top of my head, looking at trees in the public right of way and then in the parks to an extent.
It's a commission that the state, it's the only commission that the state requires us to have.
So they have this interest in, I guess, doing more work to get more organized, basically, on one hand. And on the other hand, they're interested in making sure that trees are, in a sense, celebrated. There's a Tree City USA designation that I think the borough qualifies for, has gotten in the past, and they want to keep going after it, They want to set goals for tree plantings, per year and that sort of thing. So there's some kind of high-level tasks that came out of conversation that would be great to plug into the plan. The items that were in there, they didn't really feel strongly about either way, and I think there were largely in support roles for right-of-way design in a few places. That's Shade Tree. Boulevard Commission, they're focused a lot on maintenance of the trail system and kind of dealing with that year to year. The lamps, the lighting system, and that conversion is really has the full plate. One of the action items in the old plan wasn't really explicit, but seems to be about extending the trail north of Holton Road. And so we talked a little bit about that and how Chateau Beach, the new park, is up there, and is there potential long-term for that linkage to be completed, even if it's not a rail trail type trail, if it's looking at sidewalk improvements. They like that kind of idea in theory. They just seemed a bit overwhelmed short-term thinking about undertaking projects of that scale, but we're willing to be in a support role with other kinds of projects. With recreation, we just had a deep dive last night, actually, on this. But on recreation, they've been looking at short-term and long-term projects and having them lined up for a while now. I can actually show some of that.
Does anybody know if things are moving towards a trail north of Holton Road? Like the trail between Allegheny River Boulevard and Allegheny Avenue, that trail north of Holton Road? Is that what they mean by north of Holton Road?
They mean toward the other side of Holton Road,
Yeah.
Along the railroad.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
The relationship with the railroad is such that talk of putting down a path.
Yeah. Because there's fresh stakes, like someone is staking out something along the railroad there,
Interesting.
all the way back to the, past Chelsea and all the way back to past Brent Tag and all the way back to the treatment plant, water treatment plant.
I think that's the Boulevard Commission.
Yeah. Okay.
On rec, we've got our working list that we update monthly of projects, potential projects, maintenance items. And so we started reframing our list from our annual year to year into new potential projects that are higher interest versus ones that are lower interest. And this is sort of, is funding available? Do we have somebody who wants to take it on, sort of thing? And then balancing those up against maintenance. So we'll eventually shake this out into something that will go into updating for the comprehensive plan. As I mentioned, Chamber's just now gotten back to me. I'm not really sure. They didn't seem to have much interest in participating, at least the initial email I got back. So I know one of the board members personally, so I'm going to try to see if she's getting in the back door. I still need to talk with Garden Club and Scott at some point. Just sit down with Amber, on our Senate to look, just look at their. That's so. We've got a lot of notes, and EPD has all that material too. Sort of aggregating. I've left the door open for kind of feedback from those groups as they think of things. I think it'll probably make sense for me to reach back out to them, maybe early summer, and just see once we have public feedback and it's out to see
What would we expect out of the Chamber of Commerce? Just what they think about some of these areas we've set aside, like Plum Street, or are we expecting them to have some kind of vision of what kind of commercial enterprises might want to use some of these places, Ann Street or Plum Street or something? I don't know what we'd really expect out of them.
I mean, minimally, I want to look at those items that are attached to them and just get their reaction. And if there's no interest, there's no interest. If they have other ideas, so
they should have interest. They should be interested.
yeah.
Well, just like on, when it says for the Chamber of Commerce, along with Borough Council, to meet with existing property and business owners to determine their vision of the future for Ann Street, create a plan and perform a marketing study to evaluate opportunities to rebrand Ann Street as a riverfront and mixed-use business area. What the Chamber of Commerce, I think, should be doing is, rather than just welcoming the new businesses that come to town, if they had a vision of all the businesses in town, where are the opportunities, where are the empty, or where are the services that are needed, and then had a initiative where they would promote that area or invite people in who could fit the needs, rather than just be more than just passive.
Right.
So at the April 6th council workshop, the managers from Chelsea's and Hofstadt's came up to talk about outdoor dining, and actually I think on street extending outdoor patio spaces. And I mean, that's, that kind of public realm activation is the exact kind of thing a comp plan might look to either study further or pilot those sorts of ordinance revisions. So that kind of thing interests me, and I think there are little things like that that are probably worth talking to them about. So I'll keep working on that one. So that is the outreach to date. I think I will look back around in June and see how people are feeling.
Jimmy, did those groups have a lot of input last time around, or?
No, not really, no. It's not like we were working in a vacuum, but we took the bull by the horns and wrote most of it ourselves with EPD's help and things like that. I don't know that we did a lot of real we got a lot of response to outreach.
Yeah.
There was that survey.
Yeah, there was a survey, and then there was a couple open meetings where people would come that were interested. But I don't remember it going as far as you did, actually contacting them and trying to meet with them.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're going to assign groups tasks, we better have them on board with them. Right?
Yeah, I don't recall we did that.
So it's good to just, these folks they're volunteers, they want to be involved, so it's kind of good to bring them along. And I mean, at some of those calls, folks just sit back and listen and don't have anything to add. No big deal. But it's good to just get out there and listen. So as a segue, the other part of this is the actual broader public outreach. And the first phase of that's going to be a survey, which will be online, on paper. EPD's working on distribution mechanisms that I just wanted to show you guys tonight, and Patty as well seems to. It's a pretty short 4-question questionnaire. It's meant to kind of take the pulse rather than get people down into the weeds on things. So it starts up with 4 questions. The first is really about getting people to think about what do they like now, want, and it's sort of there. I go pick 3. Actually, this has even changed since I looked at it earlier today. So the EPD is working on tweaking the language and making sure it's accessible. I was going to suggest to them too that we actually, I don't see any point keeping this abstract. We could actually give examples. When we talk about local businesses, we could say like Allegheny River Boulevard between California and Holton, for example. The second one gets into sort of a ranked, a little more detail, a little bigger than that. But the idea here is that we start to get people to tell us what's more or less important in their mind. This is one I think where we're going to work on the wording more too. It's a little bit plainer jargon, in my opinion. But again, that's just a little more detail. And then the last 2 questions are free form. In doing this, it's hard to kind of process this information on the back end, but it's really important to give people sounding boards. So we wanted to ask them 2 questions on the flip side of 1 question, to get them thinking about like long term. What's the borough like for future residents? So the question is, if you're thinking about living or starting a business in Oklahoma today, assuming you already live here, what is about the community you know now that makes that kind of an easy decision? For the guys who've only been here for a few years, you might know why you moved here. So what sells you? The flip side of that question is, knowing what you know today, what would keep you away that you didn't know when you came here? So we've got sort of things we can build on that are positive and things that we need to address.
Yeah.
And that might inform just how we set priorities, because we'll have a lot of action items that aren't going to change, I feel. But this will help us get a read on where people's heads are at. So that's my update on the work done to date. What I'm hoping to do tonight is actually go through that survey with you. I want you guys to answer those last 2 questions.
Sure.
And then kind of do a deeper dive on the key actions that you're interested in. I'm hesitant to kind of go through the thing line by line, but I know you each have kind of areas of interest and expertise, so we'll just work through
At the
those.
beginning of the survey, does it make known that there's only 4 questions? I think that would be important. That would be an important thing to have in the first sentence introducing the survey, because I've been sucked into those like survey monkeys where they just go and go and go, and then you're pissed you ever even started it.
Yeah, there's going to be an intro piece to this, so they're just drafting the content.
So you can have a catchy opening and just say there's only 4 questions.
Early on, we were discussing actually taking the approach that Port Authority took their outreach, which was to have sort of it's kind of embedded within a slideshow that was maybe 7 or 8 slides.
Okay.
And you get to slide through your section questions to answer, and then we'll give you a little more context.
Oh, cool, yeah.
We want to keep this, we really want to get responses on here, and that can slow people down and lead to surveys not being answered. There will be an intro, but it'll be short and sweet.
Okay.
So that's the overview. My thought was we could either call that the end of the formal meeting and be more informal on a discussion, or just keep rolling with it. It's up to you guys.
I'm okay with adjourning the meeting and just brainstorming so we could talk out loud, and Bianca doesn't have to try to write all this down. You'll take your own notes and we'll take notes.
I'm gonna keep recording it, so
Okay.
we have it upstairs.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Well, since there's no new business and all we want to do is kind of brainstorm moving forward on the comp plan, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Tony and Steve second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any discussion on it? Well, it's too late. We already said aye. Okay, the meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bianca.
Bye.
Yeah, Matt, I'll be sorry you missed such a short meeting. I'll teach him.
That was short, just like an hour.
So the two questions in front of us, we really are focused on the two questions, right?
I mean, if you want to work through each one.
Yeah, well, I want to read those closer. I couldn't.
Oh, yeah.
Let me lock it up.
I can see the question.
I mean, we can get up now. We're not.
Yeah, you can.
That's kind of tough, even just a picture.
Do you have a sense of when Phyllis might come back?
No, her first PT, her PT starts.
Can you do me a favor?
Sure.
Yeah, I can't hear all that well. Can you speak up a little bit at times? The masks don't help, obviously, but
Sure.
I have a hard time hearing a lot of what's being said, and it would be helpful if everybody would speak up, actually, not just Christians.
What you got? Anybody?
Oh, yeah, I'll tell you my three.
Yeah.
It was location, housing, and open space. Those three middle ones based on this, what's worded in parentheses afterwards. I could very well understand other people focused on the other three though. So those are all six. It was actually hard to pick three. I mean, not more than three.
I'd have to say local businesses for me, location and social, including in social walkability. I mean, that's really the reason why I moved here.
Good, yeah. Location meaning regionally too, being within near the Pittsburgh region and all that.
I mean, Tony and I work downtown, so, you know, it's not a bad commute.
It's not.
It's actually a little worse than where I lived before. I lived near Route 8, so I just was very close to Route 8 and, you know, just jumped on 28. So it was I was probably equidistant in terms of where I lived, but getting to 28 was a little easier.
Sure.
And we all know that what happens along Allegheny River Boulevard as you approach the Highland Park Bridge, but.
And by the time you ramp on the 28, you're almost through the traffic jam.
Right.
Now we're at the back of it.
And once they finish or fix the Highland Park Bridge snag there, that's going to even make it so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it was, the local businesses, school and safety and housing. But I echo Steve's comment about walkability, right? Like everybody I talk to who talks about moving to Oakmont, they go, guys, folks who are my age, right? Like in their 30s with young families, they're like, yeah, we're looking at Mount Lebanon, Oakmont, and Sewickley, right? Because everybody wants that walkable business district and a good school district. Right, so I think that Oakmont gets lumped into those. Like if you're a South Hills person, you're like, oh, I want to live in Mount Lebanon because I want to be able to walk up to Washington Boulevard, right? So I think that walkability, I think we get lumped in with, or no, I don't want to say lumped in, but compared to other walkable business districts, like within the Pittsburgh region, right? Everyone's like, people who move here love the walkability in my opinion.
So which category is walkability in?
So, well, I think it's local businesses, right? I.e. vibrant walkable business district.
Okay.
If you read the parentheses.
Yeah, I thought of walkability as the housing, believe it or not, with the
Yeah.
sidewalks and all that. That's what struck me as walkable, was housing.
Yeah. Or how walkable 10th Street Elementary is, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just,
Housing is getting more difficult though.
Yeah.
And that was something that was identified in this comp plan as potentially becoming an issue in terms of affordability.
Oh, yeah.
And that kind of thing. And I mean, I can't believe what's going on with prices down where I live. I mean, those houses are getting out of control.
And not even affordability, like as conventionally defined by what affordable housing is, right? Like if you want to buy if you want to buy a house in Oakmont, you're looking at like, 3, 4, 5 north of that. Like I was talking to a good friend of mine who was looking at Oakmont, who lives in Mount Lebanon now. And he's like, we were looking at a house, he's like, we looked at a house that hit the market for $650 last week and went under contract over $700, right? Like, I mean, the market, which is great for somebody sitting in this room, but and there's nothing what can you do about it? You can't create more land. You're not going to build more housing. All the housing that's going to get built is already built, right? But it's, I think a valid point, right? And that's a national trend going on right now too, right? Single family home prices are going up all over the country because interest rates are low and people want to move out of their apartments and there's more demand than supply.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, Steve, because I had that conversation recently with somebody as well that, housing prices are just, on the rise.
It's very
You can't
hard to
find a house
predict.
that's like $200,000 for the most part.
Yeah,
Because I've been looking,
yeah.
just to buy something for my son and it doesn't exist.
When I
Are you
first got,
looking in Oakmont or even outside Oakmont, both?
Primarily in Oakland.
Okay.
I mean, even Verona now has gotten,
Has it really?
not nearly as bad,
Yeah.
but stuff does not last in Verona. When it goes on the market, it's selling like immediately.
when I got on Borough Council 8 years ago, there was one man on Borough Council that said that the problem that Oakmont was going to have is the aging houses, and that as senior citizens aged out, we would have a glut of houses. That didn't happen.
Well, I kind of expected that sort of too, as the community aged and we had these large developments down here on the river. I thought there'd be a lot of houses.
I mean, I know people who are writing letters to homeowners,
Yes.
offering on their house unsolicited, like friends of mine who want to live in the neighborhood. I have a friend who bought his house on 8th Street that way, right? Like writing letters.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's, and that's a good thing. It means people want to live here, right? It's
We have such a diverse size and type. I thought there'd be the price points everywhere, all up and down the list from low to high, but I guess everything's going up. Huh.
This is all great discussion.
Mhm.
I think we're gonna come back to it.
Okay.
I'm gonna skip this second one because it's a little more involved in ranking things. You guys have started to touch on this, but just in your own words. You're moving here today, or when you moved here, what, I guess you kind of got that in that last question, which is good because it helps me redesign the survey.
Well, the thing we didn't talk about with safety, I think most of us consider this a safe place to live, without a lot of hardship or fear of burglary and our cars and things. We consider it a safe place full of fairly normal people.
I don't even think about it, which obviously
Yeah.
means that it's a moot point. It's a non-issue. It's because it is safe. It's nothing that I even give a thought to. If I'm out in the dark walking around, never even
Yeah,
enters my mind.
it doesn't mind either, right?
I think if there was one safety thing that I would point out, it would be, and it's not even crime safety, it's like pedestrian walkability safety, right? Like, I live on the corner of 15th and Holton. People fly street, right? Like, you'll see somebody who's flying down 15th Street and I'm standing in my yard, you're gonna hear me, right? Because I have a 1.5-year-old. So,
They're coming off Holton flying?
yeah, or going to Holton.
Really?
It's a cut through. And it's not just 15th, right? Like my buddy who lives on 8th, it's the same thing. People are trying to either get around the light on the corner of Holton and ARB, or they're trying to shortcut somewhere else, and people drive too fast. You know, I had a police officer once was parked out in front of my house. He's like, "What about?" He's like, "Well, how would you feel if we put speed bumps up in front of your house?" I said, "I'll write the check, right? Like, I'll pay. Just tell me how much." So I think from a safety, and I don't think it's like a rampant issue, but like Steve said, I feel very safe in the neighborhood. If there's like my one comment on safety is I think some people drive, and I don't think it's people who live in the neighborhood. I think it's people cutting through the neighborhood.
Well, I would say 13th is worse than 15th. When people
Yeah.
finally get up there and they realize they're about to go down the hill and get stuck on a line of cars, they all cut through 13th.
Yep.
You're better off than 13th.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Or is any of that a thing that would have kept you from moving here? You knew it? Not the kind of thing you really.
I don't think so, right? I mean,
He learned that after he's already bought.
yeah, and you just, I'll be hesitant to let my son play in the front yard, right? But, got back, buddy, right?
Can I make a comment?
Who was remember the fellow on Pennsylvania that lobbied and drove Adeline Brown and everybody crazy about getting stop signs on Pennsylvania? Now there's like a stop sign every block almost. There was a parent that just drove the mayor and Adeline crazy trying to get stop signs. And now he got 2 or 3 of them in Pennsylvania.
Well, that's probably driving people out the Holton to get it down, which is, if you're on the way down the bottom of Holton's,
No.
there's less pedestrian
The
traffic.
perspective I get is the availability of office space. And I don't mean even type A office space, just where would you, like, if I went up a business, where are you gonna go? I don't have an answer unless you're ready to buy a building and refurbish it.
Just
It's just availability, like there's not a great inventory
So
of.
that's question 4, you're saying.
Like the inventory of commercial space, unless you're someone who works out of your home, taking the pandemic out of this. But if you're gonna open up a business office space, there's not a lot. I remember months ago, Phyllis and I entertained 2 ladies who do nothing but incubator sites for startup. And they were looking for floor space, and they kept looking at that property at the corner of 6th and Plum, which should be blown up before they even remodel it. And I said, they need floor space. I said, I don't have it. It's just not here. And at that time, the other window store was still open and occupying their space on Ann Street. But her husband works in incubators. She's creating incubators, but they need floor area, and they're just not finding it here. And they wanted to do it here because they both moved into one. They're question 3 and question 4.
Yeah.
They want to start a business and make it be here because they now want to be from here and generate work here. But the 4 is they can't find footprints to occupy.
Would you kind of know what buildings are vacant now, or would we have to turn to real estate people to figure this out?
Present company excluded. I mean, I was going to tap into some real estate agents and say, can I see the trend of the multi-list for the last couple of years here, or at least what's happening? But I don't know about floor area for vacant.
I'm sure there's vacant buildings around.
Here's an interesting thing in terms of office space, right? So in terms of office space with proximity to Oakmont, right? There's a huge amount of office space availability. It's just not in Oakmont proper, right? But if you look at RIDC Park East plus U Park, I mean, you got a couple million square feet of office space. So although it's not inside the borough proper, there is, and the problem is U Park's 60% occupied, right? So if you want inexpensive office space, you can go there. So it's, to Scott's point, it's expensive to rehab an owner occupied office space and maybe cost prohibitive unless you really want to be here. And I think the stock's just not there, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it's Well, like walk down Allegheny River Boulevard, there's a lot of people who have quote unquote office type space, but they're occupying a storefront.
Yeah.
Right, so it's a CPA or a real estate firm or a this or a that or a dentist inside what is conventional retail space.
Yeah, agreed.
What about those places Siciliano built behind the old Oakmont Bakery? Those buildings back there, are those all filled office spaces? But there's medical and things in there.
I think they are.
They're all filled.
Yeah, there's not a lot of vacancies I see for commercial oriented businesses. And if you see anything, it's essentially you move the deck chairs. They just find one vacant space. Well, it's a little bit bigger, I'll go there. Well, then somebody just, oh, I've got a deal, but so you get this internal circular movement from space to space, but nothing that, an incubator walks in and goes, I need 5,000 square feet. I'd love to have it here, but that's just not gonna work.
Well, I think I told you this before, but at the far end of Pennsylvania by the river, Blessing Board and the places next door to them, they're all moving out.
Yes.
So there'll be some empty.
They're moving out not by choice, right? They're moving
No.
out because the rent went up.
Yeah, the rent.
So what's his plan?
Whoever owns that whole block is raising rents and driving everybody out. So he must have something in the works.
On Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
Okay.
Because West Shore left.
yeah. And then West Shore, then Blessing Board, and there even was a third place, I think.
West Shore is no longer there?
No one's vacant.
Now that you say that, I haven't seen their trucks driving around. I used to always follow their trucks.
It's more like warehouse space. It's not really office space,
Yeah.
My staff wants me to buy, I use the word buy, my staff wants me to buy it, so we have a new municipal center. The West Shore building. I've not brought that to council.
Well, that was in the comp plan about Ann Street, building a borough complex on Ann Street.
Yes.
So here's my question. Are any of these issues, can you see parts of the existing action plan that are kind of forcing them one way or the other? Where maybe the plan is like, we tweak the language in the plan, kind of makes those, maybe it's those problems or kind of supports, say, the development of small office space. That's just one example. I mean, any of the things that you guys have brought up. Or are there ones in here that are actually promoting the kinds of things we're saying we don't? We don't like.
I noticed, well, one, to touch on walkability and safety, there was an action point about creating links across Holton Road, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere in here.
Yeah, it's under transportation.
Transportation, yeah, subsection 7.
Yeah, I think it makes sense probably to take the recommendations from this. I don't know if either just reference this in the plan to make sure that these recommendations are kind of an action item that in general needs to be carried forward, or to pull out specific big ones and list them as tasks. And that way we can start to assign them to other groups or convene the ad hoc again.
What was Carolyn's last comment that she referenced about the suggestion about the overhead sign? And she was referencing the pedestrian plan.
Her point was that if, and this is specific for you guys, there's a pedestrian incident at Holton and 3rd. Pedestrian was struck by a vehicle a few weeks ago. The discussion was, would an overhead flashing sign be appropriate there? I guess whatever kind of solution, the starting point, I mean, there's probably ideas in here for one, but when going to PennDOT, being able to go with this plan already in place has got to be a leg up. There's a study you don't need to do because it's already been done. That was her point.
Holton and Third would be Third is in between the bakery and the high school, right?
Yeah.
There was a traffic study done by Speedway when they first came to town. And they had to put money in escrow for light. It turned out that their business did not create enough traffic to warrant a light.
What business, I'm sorry?
Speedway.
Speedway.
And when the bakery went in, they had to do a traffic study. And it was determined that they didn't warrant a light. PennDOT, when Walgreens went in, that's when the lights, the two sets of lights for the avenue and the boulevard went in. And they said at that time that they would not consider a light at 3rd Street, and that position hasn't changed. The initial design of the bridge had a barrier between the outgoing and incoming traffic past 3rd Street, so that if you're sitting on Holton, you could not turn. If you're exiting Oakmont and you wanted to turn onto 3rd Street, take a left, you couldn't do it. And the other way around, that if you were exiting 3rd Street and wanted to go across the bridge, you couldn't take that left. But the street isn't big enough and wide enough for that, so that they abandoned that. And so we don't have the opportunity to put any kind of a barrier to solve that problem. And if you look at the way traffic comes into town with the cars and side by side, it's easy for someone coming this way and not to see a pedestrian crossing the road. The idea of those flashing hazard lights was to alert the traffic that someone was trying to cross the road. Because of human nature, they don't go to the intersection where it's safe and cross there and double back to Speedway. So how I think it needs to be handled is we have the river is provocative, the railroad tracks are provocative, 3rd Street across Alton is provocative. There has to be, they have to be taught. You're taking a chance if you do that. Do you want to be safe? Don't walk in the middle of the tracks. Don't jump in the river. Don't cross at 3rd Street. That's about all we can do. And right now there's a lot of confusing signage, or it feels confusing when you're coming down off the bridge, because as soon as you exit the bridge, it goes from 35 to 25 right there. And you don't really realize that until you're.
The road's designed as a highway,
Yes.
and it doesn't matter what the speed limit is on it. They're 14-foot wide travel lanes, you know.
What time of day did the accident occur?
5 o'clock.
PM? That's the other thing, right? Like if you're crossing the Holton Bridge at 5 o'clock PM, you got the left lane's backed up. Everybody tries to go flying down the right lane, cut everybody off at the bakery. Like every day you deal with it. You're like, you know, it's a terrible time of day to be traveling that part of the road because people are so impatient.
Right.
Well, most of us on planning and during the whole development of the bridge all assumed that someday we'd end up with a light at 3rd Street. And it's PennDOT, the way that PennDOT has these factors set up, every time we did a traffic study, whether Speedway did it or the bakery, PennDOT's traffic factors keep saying, you don't need a light, you don't need a light. Even though we all feel like a light would probably be a good idea, it's PennDOT that was our problem every time. Not the way that studies were done, they were just following PennDOT rules or guide regulations and stuff. So I remember reading, I'm thinking, the conclusion was going to be a light, and then the conclusion would be the opposite.
Yeah.
I read the traffic studies, you know, a couple times.
The other thing the light doesn't solve is things backing up because people are trying to make either left or cross traffic because you don't have a turning lane.
Yeah.
Right. So either left onto 3rd heading into town or left onto 3rd heading out of town. You're still backing traffic up. You still got people doing the weave around because they don't want to wait. Right. Like without turning lanes, you're going to have some level of all that jumble.
And just the ramp coming in, the steepness of the ramp coming in, it's hard to go 25 miles an hour.
The traffic study showed us that we have less traffic coming across Holton Road than before the bridge. And this was before COVID, they did the traffic study. And that the traffic used to be held up on the harbor side. It would back up the lights going in either direction. And now because we have 4 lanes or 2 lanes coming into town, it dumps into Oakmont quicker. And so that's the reason why we have more traffic.
Yeah.
Not that there is more traffic, it just appears that way.
It's the same amount of traffic, just it's on our side of the bridge now instead of being delayed.
Exactly.
Okay. Huh.
You know, the truth is, and I don't know if I've said this before here, but had I known about the traffic situation, I might not have moved to Oakmont. To me, it's the walkability and all the good things about Oakmont. The traffic situation on Allegheny Avenue, and I don't even find it so bad, honestly, on Holton Road. It's once you make your movement off of Holton Road that I find it to just be completely frustrating, whether you're trying to get onto Holton Road from Allegheny Avenue in the morning or trying to get home. I'll never make that right turn on a 3rd Street during the hours that it's restricted, but nobody obeys that. I won't do it just because I'm a rule follower, but man, if you get caught on Allegheny Avenue, you know, you're backed up to the Walgreens. And anybody that asks me, how do you like Oakmont? I mean, my answer is I love Oakmont. It's tremendous. But had I known about the traffic situation, I might not have moved there. And it's also, I mean, we don't talk about the other side, but Allegheny River Boulevard, you know, coming into Oakmont or going in that direction is a pain as well.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, based on where you live, would you consider going down to the Highland Park Bridge through Verona that way,
You know,
rather than come up and just
I
fight?
typically don't do that. I mean, I'll do that when I used to go to work. You know, we've still not going back to the office. But I make sure I didn't do it at rush hour.
Yeah.
I just avoided the bad times. And believe me, for 3 years that I've lived here, I've been racking my brain trying to figure out the solution, whether that's on Allegheny River Boulevard at certain times, you don't allow cross traffic at Pennsylvania and Washington, I mean, I've been trying to figure out how to improve just the movement, and I can't come up with a solution. I don't know that a traffic signal at 3rd Street really helps anything, personally.
No, it was safety. It was only safety.
Yeah, and you know what, if you look at and I've never read the
Because of the high school.
manual, but it all goes by the book, right? If the traffic generated by the business doesn't meet the warrants, you'll get a traffic signal.
Yeah, Speedway is not destination retail, and right in, right out doesn't create any issues, which is everyone who goes to Speedway. Right in, get gas, right out.
Yeah. And it's not even all that busy then.
Until Patty just said what she said about the bridge moved the people onto this side and traffic. Most people in Oakland would say traffic has improved. It's gotten better
Since
the bridge. I think most people would think it's gotten better because it used to be so difficult to leave Oakland in the morning to go to Pittsburgh to work. It used to be so difficult.
And I'd argue, for perspective of living in communities of 30,000 people before I came here, this isn't traffic. This is not traffic. This is touch and go at the stop sign. That's all.
I know.
And your head on the bob when you're going through, make sure you don't get sidetracked.
And you're right about that.
It's not traffic. It's like a 45 minutes to an hour of inconvenience.
Yeah, but like it's even traffic within town, right? Like try going from the post office to PNC Bank between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock any weekday. It takes you like 30 minutes. And I know because I do it all the time. And I don't do it at that time of day anymore, but I do it all the time because I gotta go pick rent checks up and I gotta go, you know what you need.
I'm here when we do stuff like that.
This body isn't built to ride a bike and do business at the same time. That'd be a sweaty mess.
I also
I'm in a hurry.
Just because of this, it's not easy to get from our borough building to the PNC Bank. I can walk.
Yeah, I can't. I will park like by the cigar shop, smoking guns, like up the alley and walk down the street, across the train tracks, loop around, because like trying to get to the bank at the end of the day is awful. Awful.
Yeah.
Because it's just, the light backs everything up and it's, you know, people make a left, people make, like 4 cars get through that light at a time.
We're touching on a lot of topics here specifically.
Hey, you know what? You had brought up the links,
Yeah.
item 7, transportation links across Holton Road. Boy, we kind of missed an opportunity that you brought it up. What was the name of the 12th Street, 12 lot housing project? One Place, yeah. Remember how you had brought up a couple times if we could connect the old right of way through there so the sidewalks would have gone through. Yeah, we certainly missed an opportunity there to try to encourage them to continue the sidewalk all the way through the old right of way onto Glen.
They did leave that stormwater access easement there.
Yeah,
Maybe
but now you'd have to walk on private property to.
maybe in 3 generations when people forget about it. It's cut through.
The kids will cut through.
The kids will cut through, yeah.
Yeah, you could tell there's a little footprints, like a little path worn up there.
One of the strategies that definitely has to still be recognizing that the corridor of Holton Road and Allegheny Avenue is something that we can't lose sight on. In the overall strategic plan, of comprehensive plan, that maybe 5 years from now, we do go back and revisit studies and look at volumes. Something like that.
Yeah. That's under transportation. We talk about safety in here, anything?
Safety doesn't specifically come out in the action items.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these are probably framed from the position of, we have to do this.
Potential crosswalk improvements, there's item 12.
Right. I have gone and compared these with the work that was done by the Scout.
Yeah, so I just like her name, Audrey.
Yeah, that's probably just as a task for this update is something we should do. There's a list of projects. Small projects.
That's actually, Dan took her study and turned it into a layer on our GIS.
Yes, I saw that.
Oh, hello.
I don't think that layers in the. You shared this with me.
You know what else is funny? We were talking about lack of commercial office space and things like that. We have a lot of topic in here about encouraging mixed-use developments. And we did some of that, but we didn't really get a lot of office space out of it. You know, like even at Brooks and Blair or you know, Edgewater, we didn't really get office space there. We got some commercial and retail.
And I'd even argue the word office space to me is a very like centric. It's you want flexible space that's not residential in nature.
Yeah.
That has some type of architectural component that looks like it belongs in a downtown neighborhood, but you might get retail, type A office space, customer service, another type of retail, that's special retail or service.
I think you bring up a good point that we would probably want to attract more retail space rather than more insurance companies.
It's potential. I can still see, you know, yeah, because all the professional services we see right now are mostly, there's mother-daughter, there's some law firms, a couple of CPAs.
Well, we also were trying to protect our central business district by not encouraging retail in other places.
Or in other places. Right?
Yeah, we didn't want to encourage retail. We wanted professional offices and things like that that not compete with the central business district.
And I agree.
It's in here somewhere.
So the emphasis in some type of a building that has more professional office space environment.
What I meant was in the business district to have more retail space rather than passive office space.
Oh, yeah, like you said, people are using retail storefronts for offices. Yeah, yeah.
The space is there.
So Scott, you get inquiries about that type of space, bigger kind of floor plate?
It's sporadic. I mean, the two ladies that came in and spoke specifically about what they wanted, knew what they wanted with the incubator. But I've had other occasions, you know, I keep looking at this, the overlay that was created for the Plum Creek or Plum Street and doing a mixed use development there, but except for one piece of property, there's not a lot of physical room to do things.
There isn't, I agree with you.
So
And
it's,
I made that
so
comment somewhere in the
so do we
comments.
revisit, do we revisit?
There's not one property, other than that, there's not much that can be done along Plum Street because of the topography, the hills.
Yes.
There's not a lot of depth to a lot of those properties, so it's just that
So
one property.
Part of me says, what's ever gonna happen is gonna be the Disney effect. I'm gonna buy a bunch of small pieces up and then make something big out of it. And that other gentleman, there's a piece of property that's vacant, 3 parcels big actually. You're gonna get a letter ultimately as commissioners. It's right behind Speedway. It's vacant except for 2 standalone garages, and he was zoned R3. And in front of him is commercial, behind him is a commercial operation, beside him is a commercial operation. He has a house on the 4th side, and that's it. And he can actually petition that we consider expanding that area, like maybe move the commercial back 1 more block. But the other walls, they're all single story, small homes. But again, do you buy up? You know, correctly, buying purpose, thank you. Remember the gentleman who came and spoke to the public meeting about it? We sent him a notice about it. He always wanted to build a used car lot behind the Speedway.
Mike Lieber.
Lieber, yes. It's his property. He's still, he doesn't want to do an auto dealership, but he definitely would like to make it commercial again so he could explore other options. Or non-residential use, so we could, you know, think about it. But that's the, we don't get a lot of calls, but when we do get calls, it's that call. The disappointment. And I normally put them in touch with the chamber. So I'm sure they keep some type of, I'm hoping they keep a database of availability.
This is your comment, Steve, on the screen. About Plum Creek. I'm not sure there's anywhere to go, basically.
I mean, that's one of, you asked us to come with a couple, 3 kind of action items. I mean, to be able to do something with Plum Street and even Dark Hollow, I mean, I think about the possibilities if Felino didn't own so much of that property down there, what could be done and how nice that would be. But I just don't know how much can be done with Plum. I mean, beautification would be fantastic. Sidewalks would be fantastic. I walk Plum Street to go over to Verona sometimes, and there's not so much traffic that it's super dangerous, but I mean, it could be, there could be, you know, somebody could get hit walking along the street there.
So that Bop Trail, are you guys familiar with that? The Verona, Mont Plum, Penn Hills Trail group. Their next phase is looking at from Creekside to,
I remember somebody said that, yeah.
all the way to Alligator Boulevard. So
Yeah.
that's kicking off soon. So I imagine it's going to be mostly looking within the right of way. What's there now?
I think so.
Yeah, I kind of had the same thought about Plum. It's kind of back house, back office in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is, I mean, I think, Steve, I'd love to hear your opinion too, but, you know, to build a new building back there, it's just extremely cost prohibitive, right? To build a brand new office building right now, you got to go to support $30 square foot rents. No one's paying that.
No.
You could go to U-Park and get space for $13 a square foot, right? And so while it's ideological to think, man, it'd be great to have like a Class A office building here or mixed use development, the feasibility from a cost perspective, you need to have a really vested party who really wants to be in Oakmont and doesn't mind paying a massive premium.
Or an end user, right?
Or an owner user.
Who doesn't care?
Or an owner user who doesn't care because they're going to put their business there and leave it there for 30 years. But speculative development, not happening.
Is there, I mean, owner users, we have a lot of those, I think. I mean, is that something the borough goes after more, right? Like, we make sure that we have the right, down in ordinance, we're supporting that kind of effort so that somebody doesn't have to assemble 5 parcels in the one field, right? It's easy and cheap and the bar's low for the owner.
That's kind of like what the URA does in Pittsburgh, right? Hey, we have this list of, well, theoretically, it's what they're supposed to do. Steve's laughing at me, right? Here's all these shovel-ready development sites. Yeah, right? They, and it's easy here in the city of Pittsburgh because you have all sorts of, abandoned property or, tax delinquent property, and they can say, okay, Mr. Business owner or developer, you want to do this project in XYZ neighborhood. Here's a list of sites where you could easily obtain the property and face very little no opposition when it comes to improving the property, because our goal here is to eliminate blight, improve the neighborhood, whatever those things may be, right? So like Oakmont, I would say that there's probably very few, if any, sites that are like that, right? If everything's privately controlled, the borough certainly isn't going to, I wouldn't imagine establish a fund to go start buying up vacant property and hold it for, development for future potential owners. So it really, it's, other than acting as a resource to somebody who wants to be here and do something here, there's a lack of control aspect that larger cities may have in terms of controlling and determining what goes into those places.
Yeah, well, so I wasn't really suggesting that the borough actively facilitate.
Well, right,
stuff.
Well, physically, what we can we've done is we've opened in that blight remediation program with Allegheny County, so we can identify properties. Now, we're going to map and find out exactly where they are, but we have entered that program so we can do that. To say, hey, this parcel's for sale. We were meeting with Keystone Collections, who handles all our delinquent property issues right now, and we've identified a list of, we're going to revise it. We've not looked at it probably about 18 months. Properties that we know we're never going to get anything off because it's like less than $200 in real estate taxes. There's no owner, you can't find any errors, and there's somebody right next door to taking care of it. But there's properties that we had this bar of, when is it not feasible to do a sheriff's sale? And we worked on everything above that bar. It might be able now at this time to lower that bar and see if we can get more into the mix so you have a property changeover. So we're at least have data of the properties that we know are delinquent, the properties are listed as blighted. We can combine those lists and give them to the county and say, okay, let's start looking at what we can do. What do we have first? What can we do about it?
I don't know if the program is still in existence, but I know that it was at one point in time. There was a program in the city of Pittsburgh called the Side Lots Program, which was exactly what you're describing.
Side lots,
right? So it's a lot in a neighborhood adjacent to a residential use where that property's been abandoned. They can't identify who the owner is. The taxes are delinquent, but it doesn't make any sense to take it to sheriff's sale because it's cost prohibitive. And I don't know the particulars behind it, but I'm sure you can find it. I know they had a website at one point in time. And basically what it is if you had to be the adjacent property owner, but if you were the adjacent property owner, you had the ability to buy this property by basically paying like 3 years of whatever the back real estate taxes were, and most of the people had been taking care of it anyhow. And so it was a way to get delinquent and blighted properties back onto the tax rolls and into the hands of somebody who would take care of them.
Yep. So that's what we're going to do is these parcels again, and now we have these foundation in place, and we say, okay,
Yeah.
we can approach the people here.
Jamie, did you have any key actions that you really want to dive into?
No, I do keep thinking about things that are going to crop up again, like where Starbucks wanted to be in that Ace Plaza shopping center area. It seems like that's a key part of Oakmont. It's so centrally located. I mean, it was actually worked out great when it was a small grocery store. That was wonderful for everybody. But Ace isn't too bad of a tenant too. It's nice to have a full size hardware store in town. Like we know Panera is probably gonna leave someday, so something else will move in there if it's not the next door medical place. And that, the other thing I was thinking is parking. That's a quasi parking lot, commercial parking lot for the rest of the business district. But the borough doesn't own that. The borough does own that, the old Exxon gas station, right?
Ultimately, yes. Ultimately, it'll be a turnkey parking lot.
Because there was talking here about providing better centralized parking and things like that.
So
So,
there will be.
so I'm just looking at what notes I had written, but that Ace Plaza seems like something, it would be nice to get ahead of something there.
Yeah, I had a conversation, I've been thinking about that nonstop actually since we looked at that. And I had a conversation with Carolyn about it because under land use and housing 1 in 1A and 1B is really getting at that. That's the task for working through that. The first one's looking at amending the zoning ordinance to introduce what are called form-based standards. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with form-based code versus zoning.
I don't think I know what that really means.
So essentially Edgewater and River's Edge were created with form-based code, not formalized, it's not part of the ordinance, but that's the approach they used in order to, I think Rothschild Doing kind of managed that process to get the builders to build to a standard that got the houses to the front lot lines, right? Created that pedestrian-oriented character, kind of aligned the architecture and that sort of thing. And you'll see that a lot. They're called traditional neighborhood development patterns. That's a strict, which is what we have, right? But now it's a new thing, right? When you get your planning degree, you learn about this pattern. You learn about TND. And TND is how we did it before. Everybody had a 3-car garage.
I had to spend a week in Celebration, Florida when I first opened to do notes so we could do our neo-traditional neighborhood in Pine Township.
Right.
And my boss went to the Kentlands in Maryland, so he took notes.
Or you just come to Oakmont and you get it everywhere, right?
As part of my interview, I said, you realize that you have here what people are trying to build in the suburbs. It's a downtown corridor, community walkability with grid layout.
And now we're trying to build an urban neighborhood
Inside the urban neighborhood.
Inside Oakmont, yeah.
So that task with more exploration could kind of address probably some of the concerns you brought up, some that I had about it too. We already actually have a zoning district that does it, the mixed use one, has the standards for that sort of thing. I think that this was the one I was going to bring up, the key action item. I think it's still immediate in terms of priority.
Could you say that again? What were you going to bring up?
This specific action item, I had asked everybody to bring 1 or 2 or 3 of interest.
What about the railroad? I mean, that's one of my big concerns for the future. And I mean, can that be addressed any more specifically than it is in the current comprehensive plan? I mean, I don't know what input. It's a privately owned railroad, right? So what do we, if anything, have to say about it? How can we have some input as to how that ends up getting used? I mean, I don't know if it's realistic to think that ever becomes a commuter line.
Well, Pat, I brought this up many times, and Patty straightened me out that it's almost a lost cause working with this guy who owns the railroad. We're not going to get anywhere until he dies or something.
If the concept of having that rail reestablished between up north to Pittsburgh, the plan would be there would be no stop in Oakmont.
I just can't even imagine you've got a train going through Oakmont periodically, how much worse that would make the traffic than it already is.
Well, what would happen was the way to access the boulevard to the avenue would have to be pedestrian bridges. That we would not have the streets the way they are now. And it would dramatically alter town. Back in 1987, when the borough celebrated its centennial and the Boulevard Project created the Arboretum Trail and worked the entrance from the bridge to the boulevard all the way down to Plum Street, we worked with Conrail. And Conrail had the reputation of being miserable to work with. And we had no trouble working with Conrail. So when we first started, we did a real estate assessment and they abandoned one set of tracks. We put down the walking trail, we planted trees, we created crossings across the railroad tracks. We took down 120 signs from the bridge to the boulevard. There was a lot of visual clutter. Right where the clock tower is now, there were stairs that were crumbling. We had rodents because of the way the honeysuckle was in the on the banks. That we had a road problem. We had blight that we had to get rid of, and the Boulevard Project raised and spent $3 million from the bridge down to Plum Street, and we didn't have any trouble with Conrail. It was when Russell Peterson came to town that he owned, the borough leases from the boulevard down to the avenue, curb to curb. We lease and maintain that property. When he came into town, there was rumors that he was going to take down all the trees, the pavilion and the clock tower.
He didn't always own that? It was Conrail
No, it
before
was
him?
Conrail. Conrail owned it.
That Allegheny Valley Railroad is newish?
Yep. Mhm.
I didn't really, I thought it was forever. I thought it was
No.
hundreds of years old.
And just an aside, I learned a really big lesson working with Conrail. Matt Widener was the engineer that worked with us, and at the end of the project, I said to him, Matt, you know, when we asked for one aspect, one amenity, and you said no, how did it end up that we got it? And he said, because we say no to everybody, but you kept coming back. So I learned that never take the first no as the final answer.
Yeah.
Is that their line on the other side of the river?
I do not think so.
How active is that rail line? I mean, how much usage?
We
You
used
mean
to
the
be
Allegheny
considered
Valley line through Oakmont?
Yeah.
Yeah.
a Class D track and very, very light traffic, mainly to Chelsea Products and Brentag, and is that it?
Yeah, because Thermos took out their rail, so what Brentag is the only thing.
Yeah, I know there's that spur there, and Chelsea has a spur too.
Yes,
It goes by Key Bank.
Right.
yes, and it keeps going, it goes up further up along the river, but how far it goes, I don't know.
Does that train track dead end at the end of Oakmont, or is it like one?
No,
no.
It goes all the way past through New Canyon.
Okay.
Everywhere. It goes.
I wanted to walk that, but they have, signs up that say, can't go beyond this point, and
No, I bike it all the time.
do you?
Yeah, it goes really far. It might even go to the rail to trails that turns into trails, the Allegheny Valley Trail, Armstrong Trail.
Christian broached on it for a second, Pat Bussing did this big online website about the future of commuter transit in West Pennsylvania, including the rail system, and it shows a stop up near the turnpike. Essentially it's called Holton North, I think is what I read on the map, or something similar to that. But it literally skips Oakmont Village. It drives through Oakmont, but that'd be a whole terminus area, parking and get on there, but you just drive through Oakmont, it totally skips us. So it's actually on the map as an envision, but
We've all envisioned,
was that
It was bus.
we've all envisioned the commuter rail from New Canyon to Pittsburgh
for commuter rail?
for work, for commuters.
If
We
you're
thought there'd be a
interested,
stop in Oakmont, a stop in Verona, and then you go into Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
But Patty said there was no plans for a stop at Oakmont. That just is not mind numbing. Because I've spent some time in Chicago, and there's so many little towns that look just like Oakmont on the rail line and out in the western suburbs of Chicago. They look just like Oakmont. Everybody comes down the hill, walks down the hill, or parks their car at a little park and ride and gets on the train every morning. It would be a no-brainer to have a commuter
See,
ride.
like Pelham is, my brother used to live in Pelham,
Yeah.
same thing.
They have a vehicle that can go on the street and on the railroad tracks. I think that's what we need on the railroad tracks, buses on the railroad tracks.
They have those buses that do it, yeah. How often does the train actually come through Oakmont? Like a couple times a week?
At night.
Late at night? I've heard it at night coming in.
We have a resident that thinks it comes almost every night, at least that's what he alleges.
No, it's not every night.
Chelsea, Fred Hagen said, you can look at our train slips, and here's when it comes through.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, but yeah. So I think these lines were high frequency, high prior, without getting into the mode specifically. This is the Oakmont Turnpike. Something, the 10,000 foot, hey, these two lines cross each other, so therefore we need to put something there.
Yeah.
That one in detail.
Yeah.
On it. Yeah, that's as far as it went.
A nodal point or something.
Well, I just finished up on a regional transit project with SPC, and my gut is that, even just bus ridership here would never support like the leap to rail, heavy rail, certainly. I mean, light rail, something like the T, it's probably a little far off. But there would have to be some pretty big systemic changes in the price of gas, say, to get people to make that switch or to justify.
You know, population base is pretty, it's not growing.
Yeah, and as part of that study, Oakmont came out as a place where you want to have transit. It's got the right mix of uses, the right network density, and all those factors. But in terms of ridership today, which isn't to say that's what it's always going to be, rail's hard sell. Bus ride with transit's an easier sell. Anyway, that was a learning. We talked about a lot of these things. I don't know if you guys have any more you want to dive into. I don't want to keep you here all night too. I do want to respect your time.
Well, glancing at the map, it still looks like it's worth focusing on these. We already changed the zoning to mixed use for Plum Street and Ann Street. It seems like if there would be anything you could do to promote development in those areas. Like I still think there's a little bit of room there in Plum. If, the opposite side of the corner, where that Armstrong auto sales is and stuff, there's a little bit of a parcel there. I agree with you that some are kind of narrow. There's that church and that towing place and stuff like that up there at 6th and Plum. There's a little bit of room there for some things, but not for parking though, not if you need parking.
Yeah. Well, in order for anything to be successful up there, there's got to be a concentration.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's got to be some focal point that brings people up there and be just like the pizza shop that's there. And I mean, it's just.
In the reality, everything around it is warehousing, large truck, low employee volume, but high delivery.
Well, the only thing then would be to tear down that giant old plant there and start from
Which he
scratch.
obviously has found
Yeah.
a paying customer.
It's that's the great kid. That's him. And he came to me 3 or 4 months ago with the grandparents saying, I just want to clean up the property, put up a fence to make it more secure. Go ahead. And all of a sudden, turn around and you see all the brick pallets. Like, where the hell those come from? You didn't tell me anything about that. But he has had, the property owners have had that, 2 or 3 other individuals have come to me. The most recent one actually did drawings with Hampton Technical to do a mixed-use neighborhood development with commercial in the front with a patio home, all outside the floodway, and then attach and some. They were trying to fit all 4 architectural types in the neighborhood. On paper, they could do it, but I honestly believe it's that my property is more valuable than you think it is, and I'm not gonna sell it to you. Or they did enough to tease the property, the people on us along, that they're doing something about it.
Panza owns the property.
Yeah.
And if you know that name,
Panza owns that property.
6 and Plum, yes.
Huh, okay.
so if you know that name and that personality and that history of behavior,
Yeah, he's been a
It's gonna be
thorn in
tough.
the Verona side for years.
I think he's a resident now, he's on the
He
property.
was back there at Creekside Park behind Felina and stuff. That's a Panza property and stuff.
That's this big thing you guys are talking about?
Yeah.
6 and Plum?
Yeah.
Which one? Is that a dated photograph there?
Yeah, you could build another like Ace Plaza shopping center in that whole area.
do you remember the one night when that man came to planning with a restaurant idea, like a big, he was talking big burrito, event center.
He wanted, I remember event center is what I was thinking he wanted to do.
So people are thinking about it.
Wedding events and stuff like that, yeah. Yeah, he would have to start from scratch there. He'd tear down all that stuff.
They all will. They all will.
Yeah.
We know that, that's gonna be, the property more valuable demolished and virgin property than it is what it is now.
Yeah.
Has it been environmentally tested in any way? Or no?
No, that's a stretch.
What was the historic use there last time I was in use? Anyone know?
I don't.
I don't know.
Like a foundry or something,
Yeah.
steel workings and things.
This was good. This was my 3rd or 4th plan commission. This was good stuff. I like this stuff.
Yeah, no, it's good to talk through these things. I know this isn't a like item by item check the list, but it's still helpful. Just kind of survey of everything as we work through that. So I think we're definitely going to do this again, but probably more focused as we start to reconcile with what the other groups have brought forward, what the public's saying.
Yeah, I think we could share listening to open the envelopes and see what their survey polls are. So not leave that, just stick that on you and EPD. We should all take part in that a little bit.
Yeah. My gut is a lot of these items are still relevant. Except maybe a handful that come up, like the Riverwalk idea. We kind of identified that as something that's not realistic or something we even want to pursue. I mean, there's maybe a dozen of those throughout this list that'll fall off. But I don't think
Patty and Jamie, you may remember, so the town, I don't know how many units there are, but that little townhome development at the end of, I think it's Delaware. That's right on the river there, right behind the senior citizens housing or whatever that is.
Siciliano.
Yeah.
So what was there before that building was built? Was it, or did he just renovate that building? And how did that get built without there being some reservation of easement along there for a river walk? I mean, that thing is like built over the cliff.
That happened right before the River Overlay District was proposed.
Right.
How far back does that go? Any recollection? when
Just,
that-
not that far back.
I didn't think so, because there have been units in there. I mean, when I bought.
They're still trying to
here,
sell one or two of them.
We looked at a unit in there.
Yeah, okay. I don't know how Siciliano came to own that, but he owns lots of parcels all around Oakland. His gradually developed him, and his brother developed them. I believe, let's just say there's 6 in that very narrow lot, 6 units, a driveway back, and I think he owns the last one that's more like a house
The bigger one at the end.
at the very end, and a house on a dock.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he actually owns that.
Okay.
It's like a 3-story, maybe 3 units even. I'm not sure if he rents it or if he lives there or what. But, doesn't go back very far.
Was there some single family homes there pre-redevelopment or?
I don't remember that anything was torn down.
No, if it was almost like industrial or commercial warehouses of building,
Oh.
sheds or something.
My sense of it was, it wasn't there one day and it was there the next day.
What, how did you just pull up that plum in 6th Street?
Just Google Maps imagery, so I think it's a bit out of date.
Oh, okay, because
You can go back in time.
you can now go back in time. They've added that new feature.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
I haven't
Google Earth
ever
you
used
can
it.
too.
Huh?
Yeah, Google Earth you can.
Can you? I haven't been using it then. I know there is such a thing. Because that's several years old, if that's still all there. But the place you're talking about, over by the senior citizens, that's gotta be there. It's gotta be 15 years ago, maybe.
There's apartments right there by the.
Yeah.
Right.
The Siciliano property.
Yeah.
I don't think it's 15 years.
Gotcha.
No,
10,
8 maybe.
is that all? Because he has been trying to sell them. You're right, couldn't be that long. He's still trying to sell a couple of them.
Yeah, I think he may have finally sold out down there. I mean, I don't know if, what's her name, sign is still up down there, Schulteis or not.
It's not, I was just down there. When we used to live on Delaware and Third, and we're down there all the end of the road all the time. Yeah, that sign's not there. So,
6 years for standalone house, yeah, okay.
It doesn't appear that Chelsea's going anywhere anytime soon, right? So,
Well, they're building those new storage spaces.
Yeah, they're adding storage space. Remember from last month.
seems like they're doing well.
I mean, the railroad weren't looking to go anywhere either, too.
The, off of Ann Street, that granite place seems like it's been broken up into 3 or 4 different businesses.
Yeah,
One or two of them seem empty.
Granted, people left.
The granite people did leave? Okay. So there's some kind
That
of,
would be a nice piece for some mixture.
yeah, look at the size of that piece.
Yeah.
that's a newer building too, right?
No, I think it's just the facade's
Oh.
newer. I don't think that's newer.
And something's afoot here.
Somebody developed that.
Yeah, so that's what I was,
Cedar Way.
that's where I was saying, he's raising rents and we think something's happening in that area.
Do you know who it is, Jamie? Who owns that?
No, I could find out though.
On the county website, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's one
You
of
don't
those.
realize those buildings are that big from the street front, you know?
Yeah.
You really don't.
Yeah, because my crew was talking,
That's the West Shore, that brown looking.
this is West Shore, this is our treatment facility, this is our depot for the salt barn and the streets department. If we took this as a municipal complex, and even if police came with us, we have a lot of parking here in the back. We would just have the whole end of the property and redevelop it. So its potential would be
Yeah,
great.
closer down to the river there. There's only a few buildings.
Couple private homes with slips.
Yeah, okay.
Now, what I also envision is turnover on those houses. There's, every now and then, we get one of those sales, there's a gentleman is buying one above Holton Road on 2nd Street, and they're flattening the property and rebuilding from scratch.
Well, those 4 or 5 houses there that you just pointed out, they were all in here for the riverfront overlay district. They were the main protesters, those 5 homes.
Yep.
Because they didn't want to get caught up in being restricted to what they could do or not do with those 5 homes.
away from my boat.
It wasn't even the people to the right that have produced a fairly
In
big
Cranberry,
nuisance.
those individuals live on Freedom Road, and when the Cranberry, we'll let that widen that road for Jerry 25 years. But they're finally doing it.
What's in here? Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
There we go.
We actually, I kept my guys in one day just watch the Holton Bridge get blown up. Most of them are voters, so they're aware of it. It's okay. It'll take 10 minutes.
I don't have anything more on topics unless you guys want to talk through anything else, but I think this is good for tonight.
Okay.
I feel like I've got some good direction to take back to Carolyn.
Imagine it would help you if you continue to look over the spreadsheet and add additional comments to that. I mean, I think that's a good forum for helping out on trying to move the plan forwards.
Yeah. I'm gonna flag some of the things that seem like they should fall off, like Riverwalk. But yeah, if you could make your comments, Jamie, I'll try to get you a link to a personal email address, I guess, if you want.
Oh, that might help. I'm having trouble opening the Google Docs documents.
You know what, I had trouble on the first version that he said.
Yeah.
Are you using Internet Explorer or Chrome? I couldn't get it open on Internet Explorer.
I'm not sure what I used this time. You're
That's a
right.
conspiracy. Yeah. I couldn't open it today on Internet Explorer.
I'm about to change, I'm changing everything over to Microsoft Edge.
Okay.
From Internet Explorer, so maybe that'll help.
Yeah.
You should do that.
And then I have Chrome and Internet Explorer. And Internet Explorer is going by the wayside. No one's supporting, so Edge is the future supposed to.
Yeah, it's still.
Thank you, Christian, I never used.
Delicious. That's all.
There was a joke out there.
I never used that now the last 3 weeks.
Internet Explorer.
What do you want?
What do you want it?
Oh, really?
Now, Excel and the browser.
It's easy to use, I mean.